The untold story of Lionel Messi's childhood. Every night, for 3 years, an 11-year-old boy sat on the edge of his bed in Rosario, Argentina, and pushed a needle into his own leg. He did it himself. His parents taught him how, because it had to happen every single night without fail, and eventually, it was just easier that way. He wasn't scared of the needle anymore. What terrified him was the possibility that 1 month, the money for what was inside it might not be there. That boy grew up to be called the greatest footballer who has ever lived. But almost nobody offered to pay for the medicine that made it possible. His family had to fight for every dose. Lionel Andres Messi was born June 24, 1987, in Rosario, a gritty industrial city a few hundred miles from Buenos Aires. The third of 4 kids, son of a steel factory worker and a part-time cleaner. Football wasn't a luxury in that house. It was closer to religion, and it was free. Messi started kicking a ball almost as soon as he could walk. By 4, he was trying to join organized games his older brothers played in. There was one problem. He was small. Not slightly small. Small enough that when his father tried to register him at a local club called Grandoli, the coach took one look and said no. That should have been the end of it. Instead, his grandmother stepped in. Celia, his grandmother, walked straight up to the coach and told him to put her grandson on the field. He gave in. From that day on, she was at every practice and every match, cheering louder than anyone for a boy most people wrote off because of his size. It's why, to this day, Messi points to the sky after every goal he scores. She died when he was 10. He's never stopped pointing. By 7, he'd outgrown Grandoli and moved to Newell's Old Boys, one of Rosario's biggest clubs. What followed was almost absurd. Over 6 years, he scored close to 500 goals. His age group became locally famous as the Machine of '87. During one stretch, they lost a single match in 4 years. Opposing coaches sometimes argued before kickoff that a boy that small couldn't possibly be the age on his paperwork. He was that dominant and that tiny. But the same smallness that made him a magician on the ball was a warning sign nobody could ignore forever. He stopped growing at 9. By 10, his family knew something was wrong. It took over a year of tests before a doctor in Rosario finally had an answer. When Messi was 11, a growth hormone deficiency. Without treatment, they were told, he might never top 4 feet 7 inches. There was a treatment, nightly injections of synthetic growth hormone, the same ones that would end up in an 11-year-old's own hand every night for years. But it cost close to $1,000 a month, an almost impossible sum for a steelworker and a part-time cleaner. Newell's covered part of it for a while, then stopped. His mother started making daily trips across the city just to collect whatever money the club still owed, and some days she came home with nothing. River Plate got interested and even offered to help with the medical bills, but that deal collapsed in a dispute over releasing him from Newell's. For a stretch, it looked like Lionel Messi's career, and quite possibly his health, would be decided not by talent, but by his family's bank balance. A family contact got footage of Messi in front of a Barcelona scout, and in September 2000, at 13, he flew to Spain for a trial. Barcelona's sporting director, Carles Rexach, watched him for less than 5 minutes before turning to his staff and saying they had to sign him. Then nothing happened for months. Barcelona's board balked at committing serious money and years of medical bills to an unproven, undersized 13-year-old from another continent. Real Madrid and Atletico started circling. Messi's father, out of patience, told the club he was taking his son home. On December 14, 2000, Rexach and 2 agents met Jorge Messi for lunch at a Barcelona tennis club to make one last attempt to save the deal. There was no contract on the table, nothing the board had approved. So Rexach grabbed a paper napkin and wrote out a handwritten promise on the spot, committing Barcelona to sign Lionel Messi no matter what anyone in the boardroom had to say about it. He signed it. The 2 agents signed as witnesses. That napkin, an ordinary paper napkin from a tennis club restaurant, is the actual document that brought the greatest player in the sport's history to Barcelona. In 2024, it sold at auction for almost $1 million. Here's the part most highlight reels skip. Signing that napkin didn't fix anything right away. The move triggered a bureaucratic fight with Newell's over his release, and as a foreign player caught in the middle of it, Messi wasn't even allowed to play official matches for his new club for almost a year, only friendlies. A kid who'd crossed an ocean for football wasn't allowed to play football. He was quiet by nature to begin with, and now he was quiet in a country where he barely knew anyone. Some new teammates genuinely thought he might be mute. Then it got lonelier still. Barcelona's cost of living meant the family couldn't easily stay together. So his mother moved back to Rosario with his brothers and younger sister, leaving 13-year-old Lionel in Spain with only his father. He was the most talked about young player in the world and one of the loneliest kids in Barcelona. It took until February 2002, about a year after he'd arrived, for the paperwork to finally clear him to play in every competition. Once he was actually on the field with his new teammates, everything moved fast. He grew close with players like Cesc Fabregas and Gerard Piqué. At 14, he completed his growth hormone treatment. The injections that had shaped his entire childhood were finally over. He became a core piece of Barcelona's legendary youth side, still remembered today as the baby dream team. Everything that came after, the trophies, the Ballons d'Or, a World Cup, more goals than anyone who has ever played the sport, grew out of a family that kept fighting for a treatment they could barely afford, a grandmother who wouldn't accept a coach's no, and a napkin that outran an entire club's bureaucracy. Messi's story isn't really a story of one boy willing himself to greatness alone. It's a story about the handful of people who bet on him before there was any proof he was worth the cost. That's probably why he still points to the sky. That's the story most people never hear behind the number 10 shirt. If you like going beyond the badge on this one, you know what to do. Subscribe, because we're just getting started. Every legend has a version of this story. We're going to keep telling them.